Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Darwin's Room channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate, as always, all of your guys' support. Today we're going to be talking about The Last of Us Season 2. Let me start off by saying I am a massive fan of the video games. I love The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. Both of them are 5 out of 5s for me. I love them both for their own respective reasons. I know that the second one seems to get a lot of slack, but I actually thought it was really bold with how it kind of handled things. And I found it to be just a really stunning portrait of rage and like heavy emotion and anger, of really just this idea of when the opportunity for healing is taken away from you. And the opportunity for rekindling something valuable is taken away from you, and kind of like that rage that could ensue. And also this impeccable portrait of perception, and perception is everything. Like different points of view and understanding different points of view, and kind of the empathy to be able to understand where other people are coming from, whether you agree with it or not. So anyways, I love the video games. I've been so excited for Season 2 to come out. I really enjoyed Season 1. I think that Season 1, they did a really good job. Not perfect. I think I gave Season 1 a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. Not perfect, but they did a good job. For the most part, it was really loyal, to the video game. There was a couple things that I feel like they could have done better. I feel like the level of grittiness, like the brutality of the game didn't quite translate to the show, but there are moments where it did. It did have some really solid moments, but in general, the storytelling was great, and they did a good job expanding on the story in meaningful ways. So I really like Season 1. I think they did a good job. Season 2, I still enjoyed it. Let me say that. I do have my issues with it. I know there's been a lot of people, you either love this season or you hate it. I know there's been a lot of people dragging it, but I will say I did like it. I didn't love it, but I did like it. So Bella Ramsey, she is an incredible actress. I think she does a really good job. What's gonna get people tripped up is that her version of Ellie, the TV show version of Ellie, is not the same version of Ellie in the video game. And even for me myself, it takes a lot to get past that, because the writing, the way they write her character is different. But I am a little annoyed with how people are bashing Bella Ramsey when it's not her fault. Her performance, she does great. I find her performance to be electrifying, and she is so committed and dedicated and emotionally just invested in the role. And I find her to be very moving within this role. And she does an incredible job. So I don't think the issue is Bella Ramsey. I think the issue is the writing, because they write her character completely differently. And to be honest, and this is my big issue with the season, is that this version of Ellie feels weak, Like in the game, if you've played the game, or if you've watched gameplay, walkthroughs of the video game of Part 2, you would notice Ellie is a beast in terms of the gameplay and the way that she responds to certain situations. She is an absolute monster, and she very exquisitely expresses this rage and this tunnel vision of vengeance. I'm focused on this, nothing else, and they do such a good job of highlighting that and doing it in a way that's very artful, and where you can really see how she is separating herself from the ones that she loves on this pursuit for vengeance. And they don't do that really in the show. And the way that they do it, it just feels really wishy-washy. She doesn't feel committed to this pursuit of vengeance. It almost feels like, I don't know, it almost feels like she wanted to turn around the whole time, whereas in the game, she's like full throttle on this pursuit. And it just felt off. I didn't really like how they handled her character. That being said, if you can remove yourself from the game, you know, if you have knowledge of the game, if you can remove yourself from that version of Ellie and appreciate this version of Ellie for a spiritual companion. You know, it's not a direct adaptation, but think of it as a spiritual companion to the game. I think that you'll find some enjoyment here because even with the differences, it's still, I know some people might come for me, you know, for saying that this is actually a good season because I'm hearing a lot of backlash, but I think this is still an emotionally investing season, and it does enough to reference the video game, and it does enough to honor the video game while still pursuing a new direction, slightly. And they do a good job with character development. You know, Jesse's character, he is given more development here in the show than he was in the game. I really enjoyed that, appreciated that. Pedro Pascal, he is fantastic as always. I mean, you got to expect that. But his character Joel, he gets a little bit more development in part 2 than he did in the video game as well. Of course, you don't need it necessarily because he's the main character really of part 1, but part 2 he gets a little bit more development, particularly towards the end of the season. And it was impeccable. Like it's particularly, I'm talking about an opening scene in episode 6, I want to say it is. And it is an exquisite opening where you get to hear more about his backstory. And episode 6 is probably my favorite episode of the season. It was emotionally powerful and poignant. It was incredible. I found it to be deeply moving. And just a beautiful portrait of like the love of a parent, you know, and something that if you're not a parent, you can probably try to understand, but maybe don't understand. Like I myself, I won't understand it until I have kids someday. You know, I have an idea, you know, but I can't understand it. And so I think that episode is such a beautiful storytelling narration of what that feels like. And I think they did it so well. And it's such a heartbreaking and heartwarming episode, you know, at the same time, this dualistic dynamic that is both encouraging and defeating. So there's so much here, you know, there's so much to enjoy about this season. Episode 2, obviously, I'm not going to get into the spoilers, but obviously I knew what was coming. You know, people were going to get shaken about however they wanted to about it regardless. Myself, like I said, I love the game. I thought it was bold, and I think that they handled it well. And I know people have their different opinions, whatever. I think they handled it well. And in terms of the show, I was really impressed with how they did it. And Caitlin Dever as Abby, she is spectacular. I really look forward to seeing more of her because I think Caitlin Dever as an actress, she is incredible. I've always enjoyed seeing her, you know, in movies. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her just like dive full in on this role, you know, and just kind of go crazy with it and do her thing. And I think that she's going to do a really great job. So it was really cool to see her in episode 2. I think she did it really well. There are some issues with the writing. Again, none of these critiques are on the actors. It's more on the writing. And for me, it's because it is a little bit polarizing, you know, because they change so much from the game to the show. Whereas the first season, I felt like the first season was really loyal to adapting the video game into show format. Not as grittily as I would have liked, but they still did a really like honest to the source adaptation. Whereas this season, they definitely take a lot of changes. You know, they make a lot of changes and they switch up the approaches that they were doing. Some characters get more development and it's great. Some characters get more development and it's not so great, you know, and it kind of messes with the pacing. Like, for example, the Scars. It's a group in the game that you have to kind of get by, and in the show, same deal. You have to kind of sneak by them because they're not to be messed with. And in the game, there's like a mysteriousness to them because you don't know too much about them other than how dangerous they are and some of their religious background and some spooky stuff like that. Whereas in the show, they're given a little bit more backstory. Not a lot, but a little bit more. And to me, that kind of dragged the pacing a lot. And the show tries to take a lot of time to develop more on the lore of this world of The Last of Us. To the point, though, where they forget about the central story. And it feels like it's wandering. And the story, it feels kind of forgetful. Like, in the game, I'm sorry, I know I'm comparing it to the game a lot, but this particular thing that I'm going to reference in the game, it does point out a plot hole, where in the game there is a particular villain character that Ellie and Dina go and they kill them. And that character is in the show. That villain character, you see them in the show in episode 2. But you don't see them go after them later in the show. They skip this particular character. I don't know why. Maybe they intend to do a flashback in season 3, if they're greenlit for season 3, to show when they do that. But they skipped it. There's a lot that they skip. And the way that they handle how Ellie and Dina get from point A to point B as they're going through Seattle trying to find this person on this pursuit of vengeance. The way that they get from point A to point B, it's very like montage, okay, they're there. Whereas in the game, you have some exciting and intense action set pieces that really highlight and demonstrate Ellie's rage and her tenacity and her cleverness. In the show, they make it feel like Ellie's stupid. Like they try to make it out like she's an idiot. And in the game, she's a lot more clever than that. And I don't know why they did that. It's hard to support a protagonist that is acting idiotic. Whereas in the game, you understand what they're doing and they're much more clever about it. Whereas here, they're not very clever about it. And the main thing, the major issue, and this is the thing that docks the show the most, is at this point in Ellie's life, and at this point in the character journey, Ellie has seen a lot. She's been through a lot. She generally should be unfazed by the violent dynamics that she will see in Seattle. For example, there is an episode, I want to say it's episode 4 or 5, one of those two, where she sees a big pile of dead bodies, and she's in shock. She is covering her mouth, she's covering her mouth, and she is like, oh my gosh. And I found that to be not very fitting, because Ellie in the game, I know, I'm referring to the game a lot, I'm sorry. But Ellie in the game, though, the development is better because she'll see a pile of dead bodies in the game and she'll be very passive about it, just observatory. Like, oh, I wonder what happened to them. How can this help lead me to this person I'm looking for? It doesn't faze her because she's so hardened by it. She's hardened by the trauma she's already endured. Whereas this version of Ellie in the show isn't. And she's still kind of taken aback by the things that she sees. And I just don't think that's accurate. For someone that has lived in this apocalyptic world, that doesn't make any sense. So I was really disappointed with how they handled Ellie's character, I will say, because she just feels weaker. She doesn't feel as clever. And I don't like how they wrote her. Ellie's character from the game is much more engaging, and thoughtful. Like she evokes so much more internal thought as you for the audience. Whereas this one, it's just a little bit frustrating. But I know, like, I'm talking negative, but I'm gonna revert back to positive now, because those are my only issues with the show, is really a lot of the character writing, which plummets a lot of the quality. But again, like I mentioned earlier, if you can remove your knowledge of the game, if you like the game, if you can remove that, and if you can appreciate this as, again, a spiritual companion, something of its own, not connected to the game, just a spiritual companion with a different take, you can enjoy this a little bit more. Because even if I don't like this version of Ellie's character as much as I like the video game version, I still find this version of her to be emotionally engaging and to present some interesting dynamics. And I do still find the show compelling. And especially the chemistry between Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, that Joel and Ellie iconic bond, and to watch the turmoil of their relationship in this season and this desire to rekindle, it's an emotional journey, and it's handled very, very well. So I still think there's beautiful themes that are interwoven into this season. It is a bit more distracted. Dina, the character, Ellie doesn't have as much chemistry with the character Dina in the show as she does in the game. But, tomato, tomato, whatever. It doesn't help the show, but it doesn't hurt the show either. Again, I know people have been complaining about the writing and their relationship and how it's so different in the show versus the game. Again, remove the game. Ignore the game. Try to appreciate this as a singular experience, separate from the game, a spiritual companion, not an adaptation. And I really do think that you can find more enjoyment in it, because it's still exciting. There's more action in this season than in the first. Not as good of action as in the first, but there's still some to be had here. And there's also a lot more encounters with infected in this season than there was in the first. Because I feel like first season, I remember it got a lot of slack for not having enough infected, which, it would have been cool to see for sure, but, I'm not up in arms about it. I think season 3 is where we're going to see a heck of a lot of action, and I really hope they don't dial it down, because it's epic. Particularly with Caitlin Dever's character, Abby, it's insane. So I am looking forward to seeing what they do with season 3. This is a solid season. I enjoyed it. Again, it has its issues. It has a lot of issues. But it's still good. Even though I have all of these complaints about it, I was still able to enjoy it, as a secluded thing on its own. Like episode 1, I believe I gave episode 1 4 out of 5 stars. A solid start, couple changes, thoughtful, a good way to start the season. Episode 2, incredible. For me, it's a 5 out of 5 stars. They exquisitely take the video game and put it into the show with a couple different ideas put in there that kind of elevate it in a way and make it make more sense, which is good. I think they did a good job there. Episode 3 and 4, I think I gave them like a 3 out of 5 for both of them, maybe a 3.5. Not as good, a slower pace. Episode 3, actually, I remember a lot of that wasn't in the game, and so to its detriment, episode 3 kills the pacing of the story. I will say that. It is still thoughtful and emotional and builds on the lore and builds on the characters, but it does kill the pacing a bit. Just something to be aware of. Episodes 4 and 5 kind of get things back on track. They start showing, things that reference the game again. They start the process of this pursuit, of vengeance. and the story kind of really begins. It has its issues. Again, some of the writing is messy, some of the dialogue is messy, but it has some great action set pieces. It's still an emotionally investing journey. It's still solid. Episode 6, the best episode, 5 out of 5, the best episode of the season. And it's a flashback episode, but it is the most emotionally powerful episode that season 1 and season 2 combined have had. It is the best. I loved it. They take things from the game that perfectly replicate it while adding some different, formulas to it. And they do a good job. They do a good job of adapting it, but still kind of doing things a little bit differently. So I loved it. It's the best episode, hands down. And then episode 7, the season finale, 3.5 out of 5. I believe I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. And it's a great finale. They do a good job getting from point A to point B, or point A to point Z, Again, the issues that I have with it is that it feels like there's plot holes. It feels like they rushed it. It feels like, and I think they probably rushed it because episode 3, like I said, a lot of it wasn't in the game, so it takes up a lot of time and wastes their journey. The portion of the journey that I mentioned is like tunnel vision on vengeance and going towards that. And so episode 3 takes away the opportunity to do that. And even though I love episode 6, it's a flashback episode, so it wastes time. That stuff was in the game, but it wastes time. So that's where episode 7 kind of crumbles, is that the development that should have been there that wasn't there causes the climax to feel forced, and it causes it to feel rushed. So it's missing pieces, and I'm confident that they will make up for that in season 3 if they're greenlit for season 3. I'm not sure if they are greenlit. Let me know in the comments down below if you know if they are. I don't know. But it's a solid episode. It's exciting. We get to see Caitlin Dever again, and she's great. Bella Ramsey is powerful, like her performance. Unfortunately, her character, like I said, this version of Ellie is not as powerful as video game Ellie. But emotionally powerful, I think, her performance. Pedro Pascal is great. I feel terrible. I forget the actor's name that plays Jesse and the actress that plays Dina, but they're both really wonderful. Dina, I think it's Isabella Merced, I'm pretty sure. She's great. So it's a solid season finale. It's not great, but it's solid. So that's my general thoughts throughout the season. I liked it. It's a good season. I have my issues with it, as I mentioned, but I did in general like this season. I found a lot of enjoyment with it. It has a lot of thoughtful changes, as well as detrimental changes, but it's effective. It's still an effective season, and I think there's still some appreciation to be had for it. I think it's getting way too much hate, and I think people just love to hate. People always are looking for something to hate rather than just enjoy yourself. Look for something to appreciate, not for something to hate. So anyways, that's a separate topic, but it is a good show, and it is a good season. Not perfect, but it's good. So that being said, The Last of Us Season 2, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. That is my average rating for, each episode. So therefore my season overall would be 3.5 out of 5. This has been a great show, a decently well done adaptation of the video game, which I'm a huge fan of both of them. And I'm really excited for season 3, and I'm really curious to see how they're going to handle it. I know we're going to get more of Caitlin Dever because she'll be portraying Abby, and we're going to get to see a little bit more of Abby in the next season. And so I'm really excited to see what they do with it because I like Abby's character. I think it's compelling. And again, it adds to that theme of perception and perspective. So I'm really excited, and that's about it. So what are your guys' thoughts on The Last of Us, the video game? What about The Last of Us, the TV show? Did you like season 1? Did you like this season, season 2? Do you like the first game? Do you hate the second game? What are your thoughts on The Last of Us and the world, the lore that is getting built upon in this new season? So I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts and continue this conversation and continue a friendly debate in the comment section about whether this season is good or not. Me personally, I think it's good. 3.5 out of 5. I liked it. Not perfect, but I liked it. So I look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. Thank you guys again so much for listening, for tuning in, for watching. I appreciate all of your support. God bless you all. Take care.